Kevin Haugen for today's community comment.
Well, thank you, Jake, and welcome into today's community comment. Again, I'm Kevin Haugen, your host, filling in for Terry Bell. Our guest here on the community comment program today, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. Mayor, thank you so much for coming by and chatting with us this morning.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Kevin.
And if you have a question for our guest, you can call or text the show at 920-885-4446. Again, that phone number, 920-885-4446. If you have a question for our guest today, again, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck on the program. We have a lot to get to. It's a busy show, so we'll dive right into it. I want to sort of spend the few minutes that we have before I want to kick it back to break, discussing what transpired at the most recent Common Council meeting with the proposal for a possible second data center to come to Beaver Dam. And Mayor, if you could just sort of discuss with us what transpired at that meeting a couple of weeks ago and just where things are currently right now.
Yeah, Kevin. At our February 2nd Common Council meeting, a representative from a company called Abaddon, which is a family-owned real estate development company out of Excelsior, Minnesota, came before council to discuss their company's proposal for what we call an edge data center. It's a smaller sort of data center that plays a support role for various industries. And Abaddon has built, I believe, about 20 of these around the country already. And they were looking to purchase city property, which is located on the corner of Highway 151 and Hemlock Road. It's about a 14-acre parcel that the city purchased a few years ago. It's right, it kind of completes the puzzle of our north side industrial park. It was one last little corner that the city purchased to fill that out. And so they came there, they were offering the asking price plus for that property, and asked for if the city would be willing to enter negotiations to sell that land for that purpose, for an edge data center. So they presented at council on the 2nd. We anticipate an actual offer now. That once the council was open to the idea of this edge data center and this land purchase, now the representatives, the legal representatives from the city and from Abaddon are currently negotiating what's called a developer's agreement. It's basically a contract that would be between Abaddon and the city for the purchase of this land and the building on the property. So that's where we are now, is they're negotiating. They'll bring their they'll bring their first developers agreement to the council either March 2nd or March 16th. It just depends on how long the attorneys take to iron things out.
Sure.
And then the council will be asked to weigh in and either, accept it, or sometimes they send it back for further revisions. But that would be the next step.
Yeah. Again, this is still very early in the process here. Just first presented this proposal again at the last Common Council meeting. Still want to see if we can peel back a little bit and talk more about this in our next segment of community comment. Again, our guest here today on the program is Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck, joining us on the show today. Don't go anywhere. More community comment is coming up next.
Hey.
WBEV. In the Daily Dodge TV studios, here's Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome back into our second segment this morning of Community Comment. Again, our guest on the show is Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. The phone number to reach the show, if you have a question, is 920-885-4446. Again, you can also text your questions in. 920-885-4446 is that phone number to reach the program today. Before we went to break, the mayor discussed a little bit about the proposal the city council heard from Appoden, the new proposed data center that could be built here in the city of Beaver Dam. They're working their way through a developers agreement right now that will be presented back to the council early March, I believe was that timeline. One of the big components, Mayor, and something that the community had discussed and echoed something to the council was transparency and being a part of this discussion process. And I know it's something that was reported already was that Appoden is not asking for an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement. How does that sort of change how the city handles its negotiations or how this process then plays out when these discussions are not restricted under an NDA?
It doesn't really change what the city does behind the scenes. Yeah. All an NDA does is it limits how much information the city can disclose to the public at various points along the way. So with no NDA in place, that means every single step of the way from this initial proposal to the developers agreement, that all of that will be done at an open council meeting. We don't anticipate having to go into closed session, which sometimes is the case when you're negotiating, but at least at this point, we're thinking that when the developers agreement comes to council and everybody, including the public, will have an opportunity to see that before the council votes on it, that there won't, at that point, negotiations will have taken place and there won't be a need to go into closed session. So it's a different process than the previous data center because of the requirements that each corporation has as they're doing their business. They make requests from the city, and in this case, there are none.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask essentially next is whether or not an NDA is something that's on the table is brought forward by the company or the organization that is meeting with the city to propose whatever project they're proposing. The Meta data center, that was something that they wanted in place. Now with Appoden, that's something that they have not brought forward. So the city doesn't have any say whether or not an NDA has to be put in place.
Well, the city does have a say. We've had many businesses that have asked for NDAs, and the city has honored many NDAs from corporations in the past. Different businesses coming into the city have different requirements when it comes to market competition and various industry factors where they feel they need to keep their company brand out of the public, at least for a limited amount of time. So each company that comes to the city and wants to do business, they lay out what they would like, and then the city has the option to accept it or to turn it down or to ask for modifications. So, in this particular case, Appoden they didn't need any. They didn't feel so.
Yeah, this might be something that is too early to say for certain, but will any of the draft development agreements or even feasibility studies that come along with this project, will those also be made available to the public, or is that something that only the council will review and have access to?
The only document that will be created is the developers agreement, and the council will receive, I'm sure there's lots of different iterations going back and forth between the lawyers, but eventually they'll have an agreed upon document, and that will go out to council, and that will be available along with the agenda shortly before either the March 2nd or March 16th meeting, whenever it's ready.
Another big component of conversations around data centers, and has been with the Meta data center, is the toll on local resources and utilities. Mayor, can you speak a little bit to kind of what Appoden has said already when it comes to what their edge data centers would use when it comes to those components?
Sure. Just for comparison, when we look at the Meta project, that was 700,000 square feet in the initial build-out. Now we're looking at, for Appoden, they're talking about a 90,000 square foot structure, so it's much smaller. We're looking at a not quite 14-acre site versus an 800-acre site. So, I mean, the scope and scale is just dramatically smaller with this project. Right now, and again, our city utilities and engineering staff are getting specific numbers for this specific project, but the initial estimations from the company say that they're looking at using about 20 megawatts of energy for running of their data center. Mm-hmm. That's compared to 400 megawatts for Meta. So again, much smaller scale. And Alliant was at the meeting on February 2nd. They've provided what's called a letter of support. And in both cases, the representatives from Alliant are saying they have the energy needed for not just this new project, but for projected projects in the coming future. So they're wanting to to reassure the council that Alliant has the energy necessary to support Beaver Dam's growing economy. Yeah. In terms of water usage, the best estimate the company is able to give us is a data center of the same size that they're proposing here, similar, almost the same technology that they're using. This data center that they used for comparisons is in Virginia. And because of the warmer weather in Virginia, that data center would be using more water than the one that would be here. But even with the projections from that current example, they're looking at, I think they estimated about 6,000 gallons daily usage, which again is about the size of a large full-scale restaurant. Mm-hmm. And many other community users of water approach that level already. So our utilities department doesn't feel it's a huge concern, but again, they're doing their due diligence, and right now part of the process is our engineering and utility staff are crunching the numbers and making sure that we have all the water and, clean water, wastewater, stormwater systems in place that can handle all of the loads, not just the average daily load, but if there's a fire and we need water for fire suppression, do we have enough water? All Sure. of those what ifs. And they're doing those numbers now.
Yeah, and when it comes to water usage, and if the city just finds that there's enough in the current infrastructure and utilities to cover it, does that mean that the rates will not go up for citizens here? Is that kind of the thought process for the city, is to not increase water rates for city residents?
I'll have to go back and look. I know. Okay,
Sure.
So the city can only, in order to raise our water rates, mm-hmm. the city has to go to the Public Service Commission. We have to do what's called a rate case, where
Sure.
we put together all of the reasons why we need to raise our water utility rates, and we have to take that case to the PSC. And we recently had a successful case where they gave us permission to do that. And I would need to look up the date when I think that went into place last June, perhaps, with that water bill. But then we can't ask for another rate increase for, I believe it's 3 years for a partial rate increase or 5 years for a full. So there won't be any, even if we wanted to, which I'm not saying we do, there would be no reason why we would Sure. want to increase. We're not having to drill a new well. We're not having to add on any new infrastructure for this project, so there wouldn't be a reason why we would need to raise rates.
And the numbers that we're discussing here, the amount of wattage this Appoden Edge data center would use and the water required, are there parts of the negotiation process that obviously, these organizations, they give you an estimate of what they think they might be using during their when the facility is up and running, is there safeguards in place if that all of a sudden changes and that's going to go up, or even if down? Is there conversations then to approach the company and discuss how things are developing as the data center is opened up and running?
Yeah, well, a developer's agreement is a legally binding contract between the city and the company, and so if there's any change either on the company's part or the city's part of the terms that are in that legally binding contract, there needs to be negotiation. Or if, it's just like any other contract, if one of the parties in that contract doesn't live up to the contract, then there are legal consequences. You can be sued, you can be taken to court. They're just the normal legal process. But this, the developer's agreement, it's not a suggestion, it's a contract.
Again, we're with Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck here on Community Comment this morning. We do have to take a short break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
Meet
Haugen for more of today's community comment.
Well, thank you, Jake, and welcome back into today's community comment. Again, I'm your host, Kevin Haugen. Our guest today on the program, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. The phone number to get into the show, 920-885-4446. One more time, that phone number, 920-885-4446. If you have a question for Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck, who have been talking so far most of the show, taking up the conversation has been about the new proposed data center by Appoden that was presented to the council at their most recent meeting, or in the January meeting, excuse me. And we just have a couple more things we just want to touch on when it comes to this project before we move on to our next topic today.
Yeah, I guess we should mention that not only is there no non-disclosure agreement required by this particular company in their proposal, there are also no city incentives required. That they came to us, they're willing to pay above the asking price for the city land, and they are not interested in any large incentives the city would want to offer. At this point, they feel that they're ready to dig into the project without those incentives. So again, that's a wonderful advantage for the city, not having to worry about using any kind of TID funds or anything else for an incentive for the company to be here. So that's a plus. And then, of course, we can't forget that the whole point of economic development is not only will this project eventually provide 15 full-time jobs, but also we're talking about over a minimum $40 million increase in taxable value, which translates into millions of dollars in property taxes that will go into the city treasury. So.
Again, our guest here on Community Comment today, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. Another big discussion happening at City Hall here over the last, it's been going on for a long time, but is kind of ramping up here in the last several months, has been the discussion around the fire station. The current one, after a study was done, has pretty much shown that the building is obsolete, it is outdated, antiquated. Now really the conversations have shifted towards what to do about it, whether that is tearing that down, building a new fire station, or potentially building 2 new fire stations. And tonight at the Common Council meeting, the firm that the city has hired, I believe it's 5 Bugles.
Correct. Yep.
That the city hired to sort of work through this process and just help give recommendations for the city to ultimately decide on what to do. We'll be presenting tonight. Is it the final conclusion of their study, essentially, or
Correct.
what will the council be hearing tonight?
Yep, the final recommendations from 5 Bugles. All along, we've been receiving updates and information about the site itself, and then proposed future sites. And so this will be the final recommendations, and it includes cost estimates for the various options that they present. All of this will be presented to council. I don't know if council will, they probably won't make a decision this evening because they just recently received, actually I think they received the hard copies of the reports at our last council meeting 2 weeks ago. So they may, if they've done their homework, some of them may feel ready to make some kind of motion, which they're free to do at the meeting. Yeah. So I don't know for sure. Just on the agenda is a presentation of these final recommendations, and then a discussion by council, and what they may or may not take action. But the final recommendations, and we've known for a while now that our fire station, which was originally built in 1959, it just would not be cost effective to update it. The current building, it would cost more money to fix than it would to build a new building. So fixing the old fire station is not on the table. The question is, as you said, do we build one new fire station, one large new fire station, or do we build a larger main fire station with a smaller satellite fire station? So that's the first decision the council will have to make, is 1 or 2. And given Beaver Dam's geography, we're kind of a long, skinny city because we wrap around the lake. The recommendations are pointing to that the best in terms of response time for city residents, trying to get the largest number of city residents within a short amount of time travel from a fire station. The best option would be 2. But of course, with 2 stations, you have challenges. One of them is the cost. They estimate, and again, they give us estimates based on current construction, but if we're going to be doing this a few years from now, the cost will go up. They're looking at, if we construct one large fire station, they're estimating about $24 million. If we would do a larger main station and a satellite station, they're looking at about $30 million in costs as an estimate. But then the second option with 2 stations would also require us to hire more firefighters to staff that second building. Yeah. So instead of just the one-time capital investment in the building, it would be an ongoing forever expense to expand, and they're estimating 6 full-time staff members to fully staff that new fire station.
Yeah, when it comes to surrounding the conversation about building 2 new stations, I found it very interesting. The fire chief that talked about this quite a bit also. There's kind of 2 factors to take into consideration, and that's one, the growth. You mentioned the shape of the city is long and skinny, and a lot of the more recent growth we've seen is coming from the north side of the city of Beaver Dam, but the stuff that the fire department says, that there are large call volumes primarily come from the south side of Beaver Dam. So you were really sort of stuck in between trying to find, if we do build one, where is the best place to put a single fire station so you can respond to where the calls most come from, but you also have a major growth continuing to happen on the north side of the city. So that is, something that the council will have to discuss and figure out. And you mentioned, there may be a recommendation that is brought forth tonight by city council. If it doesn't happen, is this going to be a recurring item that the city council will be discussing here for the next couple of weeks, that, if something is not decided tonight, the next council meeting will be brought up and decided then? Or how does the next couple of weeks look like if a proposal or a recommendation from the city council isn't made tonight?
I can't say for sure, but I'm guessing that if there's no action taken this evening, then it will be most likely put on our next agenda. Because again, as you said, this is not a new topic for us. Yeah. We've been talking about this for quite a while. And so I think the council is ready to take action, whether that's tonight or in 2 weeks. That's the question. Yeah. And either way, at that point, once they decide versus 1 versus 2, then the next step I think will also come fairly quickly, which is where specifically the 1 or 2 places, and that involves, and the study also looked at specific sites and gave recommendations, and some sites are better because they have better access, some sites are better because they're more cost effective. They looked at a variety of factors and ranked the various sites that had been brought up by both city staff and council members and the fire department. So the next step will be to look at the specific locations and then decide which of those locations the city prefers. And then at that point, some of them are already owned by the city, but some of them are not. So then the next step is, okay, we have to, approach landowners and see what kind of deal we can cut. But yeah.
Maybe this is too early to really sort of get into the nitty gritty, but obviously the cost estimate, you mentioned 24 million potentially for one, close to 30, and then even the ongoing, if 2 are built, for hiring more firefighters. Is this something that the city has also been looking at in tandem with the study and what they've been seeing so far in terms of the best way forward to go for paying for these projects? Or is that something that will still be lots of conversations surrounding that as well?
That's been a parallel conversation. Yeah. How are we going to pay for this? That's a constant conversation at the city level, as we are always acutely aware of the limitations of our budget. And so we've been talking for some time. I know that we're looking at grant opportunities, that there are some federal and other organizations that give grants for these kinds of projects. Again, it's not going to pay for the entire project, but it could help take a bite out of the project. We're definitely looking at what it would cost to borrow money, which is probably at some point we're going to have to at least finance a portion of the construction. So we're looking at our options there. Looking at where else in our budget we have little bits of money that we can pool together to help take a take a chunk before we finance. So
this might be diving way into the hypothetical bag of possibilities here, but I know the last time that the Beaver Dam Fire Department discussed expanding their staff, if I remember correctly, it was a non-binding referendum that went out to the city and to have a say in what would be done on that particular conversation. If the council decides to go with 2 and there needs to be an additional hiring of staff, is there potentially a repeat of that situation again, or do we not know yet at this point?
we don't know, but if we are going to, normally we like to grow our city staff slowly within the parameters of our budget. But if we have to hire 6 new full-time firefighters all at one time, then that most likely will require potentially a referendum, some way to pick up that large price tag.
Our guest here on Community Comment this morning, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. We have to take another short break. More Community Comment is coming up next.
Kevin Haugen.
Well, thank you very much, and welcome back into, as you heard, our last segment of Community Comment this morning. Joining us on the show is Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. The last opportunity to call in for our guest here on the program today. That phone number, 920-885-4446. You can also text your questions in. Again, that number, 920-885-4446. If you have a question for our guest, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. Excuse me. I have a couple of topics here we want to get to in our last segment, and want to kick things off discussing a new, really great opportunity for people who are in need, especially during the colder months of the year. Probably wouldn't need it today, but doesn't mean those opportunities will not come up again here as winter is still in full effect for a couple more weeks at least. But that is the opening of a new warming center here in Beaver Dam.
Correct. As I think many people are aware that Beaver Dam used to have 2 complete homeless shelters that were run by the Central Wisconsin Community Action Coalition for years. And that organization recently made the difficult decision to step away from running those shelters. So as of September 1st, Beaver Dam no longer had a homeless shelter. Either they were operating a men's and a women's, and so they both closed. So since that time, leadership within the community, social service agencies, the city, our faith-based communities have been in discussion trying to figure out what we could do to provide some relief. So the first initial step was simply to get a warming area during the winter. And so we've been successful. And there are a lot of steps involved, but we've opened a warming center at Trinity United Methodist Church. Those wonderful people who have really stepped up and accepted this responsibility. And it just opened last Tuesday. They are still looking for volunteers because it needs to be supervised. They like to have at least 2 people there to supervise every shift. And it's open from, I believe, 8 p.m. until maybe 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning. And people are free to come and sit and get warm and have a cup of coffee, and they're whatever, read or do board games or whatever. They'll have some activities there. But the idea is just to make sure that no one is sitting outside on these really cold nights.
If people were looking at volunteering, they just reach out to the church if they wanted to lend their hand and support and say, hey, I'm interested in helping out.
Correct.
And they can talk with the leaders there and figure out the dates and times that would work out for them.
They can. They also have an online application that you can fill out if you just want to go online and fill out the application and submit that as a volunteer. That's another way to do it too.
Great. It might be, again, too early to say for certain, but is this something that the church hopes to continue next year as well, or is there no confirmations yet today whether or not this will also be available next year?
Yeah, all we know for sure is we have the warming center funded and set up through March. Whether, and again, part of it is weather dependent, whether it's cold enough after March to need it this year or in the future, we don't know. This group that has been meeting to discuss this whole larger issue, this is just the first small step. The next step is looking at getting to full-time homeless shelters back in the city. That's going to be a bigger task. Ideally, we would have those homeless shelters in place by next winter. That's the goal. But we're going to have to just see how it plays out.
Another thing that is returning and also needs volunteers as well is a fun festival that unfortunately had to be canceled last year, but is now making a return this summer.
Yeah, I am really excited because Beaver Fest, which is sort of an old name that's making a return, is coming back. Our July festival that celebrates the lake and everything Beaver Dam will be coming back on July 10th and 11th this year. It's being spearheaded by an ambitious group from the Chamber of Commerce Leadership Beaver Dam class. This is their project, and they're doing a great job of stepping up. They're collecting donations, they're signing up volunteers, they're looking to create a lot of the similar vibes that we've seen in our Beaver celebrations in the past. At this point, I know that, on Friday, the Muskies will be performing their show, and there will be fireworks. I know a lot of people are excited about the Friday night fireworks. The day before, on Thursday the 9th, we're looking to have a celebration of the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. So that'll lead into this fun weekend. On Saturday, we have professional boat races on the lake. They're also in the morning, I believe. They're looking at another cardboard regatta and pontoon rides. Some of the activities that we've enjoyed in the past, I believe they're looking at bringing back. to Tahoe Park on Saturday. And then, of course, who can forget on Sunday the big Arts and Crafts Fair at Swan City. So slowly but surely it's coming together. There's lots of ideas out there. If you have ideas or if you are someone who wants to be involved, you can contact me. You can contact Tracy Probst at the Chamber of Commerce. I know they're potentially looking for music at the park on Friday evening and beyond, depending on how the funding comes in. So, yeah, it should be a good time.
Yeah, something to look forward to here in the summer months as we're getting closer to some warmer weather that will hopefully stay for more than just a couple days as we're seeing now. Last topic I wanted to hit on here before we have to wrap up our show is the recent ribbon cutting of a new apartment complex here in the city of Beaver Dam.
Yeah, it's always fun to give updates on projects that were started what seemed like a long time ago and now are finally coming to fruition. But the Rivers Row complex, which is located on the corner of South Center and Ryan Contafio Way, we had a ribbon cutting for that a little over a week ago and got to see the inside of these beautiful apartment homes and just celebrate the fact that we have some great new housing opportunities right downtown Beaver Dam. Yeah. So that was fun. I'm excited to report that our library project, Phase 1, which is the major remodel, is on track and on budget, and they're going to be opening in late spring. And now they're working on Phase 2, which is the lower level. So they're full steam ahead, looking for funds and doing some planning, so that's always exciting. And then we can't forget Swan Park. Phase 3 of Swan Park will be taking place late summer, early fall, with the remodel of the band shell and the amphitheater and additional walking paths and replacement of old walking paths. And they're planning an archaeological dig in Swan City Park this summer. So
exciting!
Yeah.
Is that open to the public?
Historical Society. They're going to get families involved.
Awesome.
It's through, I believe, the University of Wisconsin. No, I'm sorry, I don't recall now who the organization they're working with. But they're going to get families involved, and they're going to do some digging, look for some artifacts.
All right, so a lot of exciting things here on the horizon. And one last question: there's also the apartment complex development being built out by Walmart here. Is there any updates on what that timeline looks like for that being able to open up?
You know, I would have to go back and look at my notes. I think they're looking for at least initially opening some buildings in the fall, next fall, but I'm not positive.
Those are coming up quick. I tested you on that one. I kind of sprung that one out of nowhere, so we were not prepared for that one. But I know that's sort of the next big one that is looked to be completed here, because the units that I saw or has seen online that at the Rivers Row apartment complex have been snatched up quickly. So having more opportunities for housing here in Beaver Dam on the horizon, I'm sure is a great thing for citizens here in Beaver Dam.
Yep. Exactly.
So, again, I want to thank our guest here on Community Comment today, Beaver Dam Mayor Bobbi Marck. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
A pleasure as always, Kevin.
And that will do it for today's Community Comment.